This video tutorial will demonstrate how to add and manage Blackboard Collaborate sessions directly from within your Blackboard course website. There are two parts to the process. The first involves naming the session and setting any properties and permissions for the participants, and the second part involves putting a link to the session somewhere in your Blackboard website. The process is similar to the way you create discussion forums in the course discussion board and then link to them from anywhere in the site. So, we begin in the course and turn Editing on. Then, move over to the Control panel and click to expand the Course Tools menu. Next, click the link for Blackboard Collaborate, and you'll arrive at the page in your site that lists any and all Collaborate sessions that have been created so far. Here you can see that mine is empty because I have not yet created a session. Creating a session is simple, though. Get started by clicking the blue Create Session button. The first thing to note is the row of tabs across the top. In the process of creating a session, you will likely need to visit most of those tabs before you click Submit to actually create the session. Be warned, however, that the Blackboard user interface is misleading about this, and if you click Submit before you've visited the other tabs, you'll be stuck in a less than optimal situation. To fix it, you'll have to backtrack and edit your session to make it the way you intended. So remember, don't click Submit until you've visited the tabs. The first tab is the Information tab, and it's fairly straightforward. Type the session title. You'll have to remove the default text, unfortunately. And choose whether your session will be limited to the course you're in or to all of the courses that you're associated with. In this example, I'm creating a session for my online office hours, and while I could choose more than one course to share the session with, here I'll just stick with the current course. Next, choose the beginning and ending date for your session. For something like online office hours, you have two ways of thinking about it. I prefer to set the start date and the end date of the session, but set the end date to be far off into the future, say the end of the semester. Note that you have the option to create wholly independent sessions based on a repeating calendar schedule, such as weekly or monthly sessions. And while I don't use this method for online office hours, it's important to know that it exists. Next, there are some session attributes that you can set, and these are pretty self-explanatory. You can leave these defaults alone if you're not sure. Next, decide whether Collaborate should add a column to your gradebook and determine how many points it should be worth. Finally, even though it seems like you're done, I recommend that you don't click Submit yet. Instead, scroll all the way back to the top and click the Participation tab. There are two aspects contained in this tab that you might want to consider. First is the question of moderators. If you would like all participants to have moderator privileges when they enter the room, check the box for All Moderators. This is useful if the room will be used by student study groups who are meeting on their own without you. Making everyone a moderator by default allows the students to upload PowerPoint content to the Collaborate whiteboard, to turn on application or screen sharing, and to manually control the recording of their session. For online office hours, though, it's not especially useful. Another way to approach the moderator question is to appoint specific class members as either moderators or participants of the session. For instance, if you have class groups and each group has a group leader, you might want to assign the group leader as the moderator of the session by default, with the other members acting as regular participants. To assign specific class members as moderators or participants, you must first check the box for Restrict Participants. This will allow you to specify the roles for individual class members. For moderators, click on their name in the list and then click the right-facing arrow next to the moderators area to move the name into the moderators list. Then, to specify a list of participants for this session, find those names in the same list and click the right-facing arrow next to the Participants area. First, note that your name is always listed among the moderators and can't be removed from that list. Obviously, you want the ability to enter a session at any time and supervise it. Second, note that specifying participants and moderators effectively limits access to the session to only those individuals. Remember, though, that you do not have to specify moderators and participants at all unless you specifically want to limit access to the session to the people to whom you assign those roles. At the same time, you must remember that if you do specify a student moderator from the list, but want to have the entire rest of the class be regular participants, you will have to select all the people who will be participants and add them to the participants area. Otherwise, they won't be able to use the session at all. Fortunately, you can shift-click the names to select more than one at a time. Below are some options for allowing outside users who are not officially enrolled in the course to access the Collaborate session. Check the box for Allow Unregistered Guests to turn that feature on. Those users will be emailed a regular link to click on, and Collaborate will open and launch the session automatically. Note that those guest users will not have access to your regular Blackboard course site. They'll just be able to launch Collaborate on their own computer and join the session they were invited to. As before, don't click the Submit button just yet. Instead, scroll back up to the tabs. The next tab is the Sharing tab, and you'll likely not need anything from it unless you want to upload a multimedia file into the session before it starts so that it will be ready for download by the time participants join the room. So, feel free to click to the final tab, Content Area. Let's sum up quickly. To this point, you've been setting the structural characteristics of the session itself. You've specified the who, the what, the when, and perhaps even the why. Now, in the Content Area tab, you'll specify the where. In other words, where is the link to the session going to be located in your course website? In the Content Area tab, you specify the details for the link that your students will click on in order to actually launch the Collaborate session. Use this form to give the link a name. In other words, what will the link text actually be? You'll have to retype that, unfortunately. You also tell Blackboard where in your course site the link should appear. Put a check next to the content area that you'd like to use. You can expand the listing by clicking the double-headed drop-down area to reveal content areas that are at lower organizational levels. For this example, I'm going to put my link on the basic information page. Also, fill out the description box with any information you'd like displayed adjacent to the actual link on the page. These can be instructions, further details about the session, or any other type of descriptive text. Note that there is also a required checkbox to visually remind the students that a session is in some way required. The word required will appear below the link if the checkbox is clicked. However, this checkbox doesn't actually enforce anything, and if you don't check it, the reminder will say suggested. Unfortunately, there's no way to disable the reminder entirely. Part 2 of the Content Area tab lets you specify a starting and ending date for the display of the link. This is entirely separate from the availability of the session itself. In other words, you can choose to hide the link to the session until just before the session begins, if that fits your pedagogy. Similarly, you can have the link be hidden at the same time your session ends. Normally, though, it is safe simply to uncheck both boxes in order not to have any display restrictions at all and to allow the link to display always. With the content information set, you will now have a link that people can actually click on to join the Collaborate session, and you are finally ready to click the Submit button so the session can be created. Upon clicking the Submit button, you are returned to the list of your sessions where you'll see the session that you just created. If your session is available right now, the title will be underlined, and you can launch Collaborate and join the room by clicking that link. And here you see I've arrived in my session. Alternatively, you can visit the content area on your site where you instructed Blackboard to place the link, and join from that location. Since you've added the link to a content area, you should tell your students where that is. They don't have any other way of joining the room. So, to review, creating Collaborate sessions inside Blackboard gives you a great deal of flexibility with how the session will operate. Remember, though, that it is a two-part process. First, you set up the details of the session, and then you specify where the link to the session should appear on your Blackboard website. With those two parts working harmoniously, you should enjoy a lifetime of successful Collaborate experiences. Lastly, if you have any questions about using Blackboard Collaborate or need help integrating a session into your course site, please contact Glenn Pillsbury at the address on your screen. And thus the tutorial concludeth.